I've said a gazillion times, the correct way to model in sports betting, create a model and then create lines based on that model, compare those lines to the sports book. However, I've had a paradigm shift in my philosophy here in the last, 6 months. I just don't think that's the correct way to build models. I think you should focus strictly on building power rankings absent of any lines. I'm going to prove that in today's video. If you don't know who I am, my name is MGCovers. Greatly appreciate you tuning in to this video. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, this channel is devoted to sports betting education. If you want to improve your sports betting, it's a great channel to follow. A ton of content here. We don't put out a lot of free plays. And also a huge shout out to everybody that has subscribed, liked the video, commented. Greatly appreciate the support. We had the most amount of growth we've ever had on this channel in August. Granted, I put out a ton of content and will continue to put out a lot more, quote, good content. So look for that. I'm going to try to drop a short every single day, as well as about 3 to 4 videos each week. So greatly appreciate to everyone that has helped this channel grow. All right, so let's dive into this, and I'm going to give you a real live example. Again, premise of this video, I've often talked about creating models, and then you create a line, you compare that line to the sports book. And again, I've had a philosophical change to where I just don't believe that's the best way to do that. Now, let's dive right into this NCAA football model. Now, if you go back to just the last video, what I was suggesting to do, and I like showing real life examples like this so you can actually see how I was thinking. Let's look at this North Carolina-Minnesota game. Now, I had these teams basically even via my model, and the line was actually North Carolina -2. So my philosophy and how I interpreted my model was, hey, if these teams are even, and then the sportsbook line interprets them as even, meaning it was North Carolina -2, we will weight the home side heavily, meaning we'll add points to the home side. And if we get positive line movement, and then that would be considered a play. North Carolina actually won this game. And actually my line was Minnesota -7. And again, that's an arbitrary number, meaning like I came up with that line via the model and made that line up. And again, I factored in some important variables, but at the end of the day, it would still been calculated a loss. Let's look at Coastal Carolina, Jacksonville State. We did the same thing here. I had these teams basically even. We had line movement that moved in favor of Jacksonville State. My line was Jacksonville State -7.5. They actually got blown out. Now let's scroll down here to Miami and Florida. I'm going to show you my line. Again, I did it the same way. Miami we had at +5. Florida was -5. Why? We had these teams basically at even. Books had them relatively close to even. We gave the edge to Florida simply because they were home. Now, this is wild. Let me show you the actual line movement in that game. All right, here you got Florida, Miami here. All right, let's scroll over here to odds. And this is Bookmakers Review. It's a pretty good site to look at. It just shows offshore odds, but there's a couple sharp books in here. The one we're going to look at is Bookmaker. And check out that line movement. All right, so this was yesterday. It was 2.5. It goes down to 2 at 322, back up to 2.5. The final move favored Florida at +2. So that means you had a lot of sharps on the Florida side as well. However, Florida was blown out in that game, and Miami won 41-17. So therefore, the way I was interpreting this model was incorrect. Now, let's shift gears. The philosophical change I've had in my sports handicapping and building models and the way that I'm going to teach this moving forward is I think you should just have power rankings, and then you're going to basically apply the margin concept. Now, there's several ways you can do this. Number one, you can just play the top teams via your power rankings, meaning once you have all your teams organized, whether it's NBA, NFL, etc., you could say, hey, I'm just going to play these top how many ever teams you have to play with it. For example, baseball. We only play the top 6 teams for MLB via my power rankings. If one of those top 6 teams are playing another team in the top 10, we avoid that play. Or if the line is greater than -150, we don't play it. Everything else is a is basically play. So what I did was with the NCAA power rankings was I organized, these are all the top teams, and I'll read through some of these just so you can see. Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Pittsburgh, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Ole Miss, Michigan, Auburn, Oregon, Notre Dame, Texas, LSU. Now, Notre Dame and Texas A&M were playing each other, so that basically, quote, cancels it out. Whereas the old way that I had calculated it, I gave the edge to Texas A&M, which was incorrect. All right, now, and also calculated all of the bottom teams via the model, and I'll just read off some of these just so you can get a feel. Howard, Central Connecticut, Western Carolina, Fordham, Southern Utah, Eastern Illinois, Sacramento State, Bucknell, Chattanooga, Towson, Merrimack. So you get the feel. We had a lot of those, a ton of those. Now, so here was my thought. We're not going to create a line. So when I went back and I just back tested this morning, all we're going to do is we're simply going to play for the top teams, irregardless of the spread. So we play all of the, quote, top teams, irregardless of the spread. So if the spread's minus 48, we'll play the top team minus 48. And here are the results. Whoops, I'm going to have to slide me down just a second. Big reveal, 10-3. Arkansas 1 and covered, Missouri 1 and covered, Oklahoma 1 and covered, Pittsburgh 1 and 4 covered, Georgia 1 and covered. Now, watch this, what I do with Georgia games. So Georgia was a play via this way, but look what happens when I try to interpret it and turn it into a line. Is it not going to work for me? Oh, yeah, I got it here. My bad. All right, let's see if I can find the Georgia line. That was earlier in the day, so it should be at the top. Now, look at that. So my line, the way I interpreted it, again, when you create a line, it's at the end of the day, it's still an arbitrary number. So I calculated UGA minus 8.5. Well, you come up here and look at the line itself. The line was UGA minus 10.5. So there's no value there. Lines are very similar. However, if you just use the, quote, power rankings, Georgia is a, quote, top team. We play on them irregardless of the spread. That was a win. Tennessee was a win. Texas, Ohio State didn't cover. Michigan didn't cover. Oregon didn't cover, but all these other teams did. So that goes 10-3. And then we have, just for example, then LSU would be a play. I think they're playing tonight. They're playing USC, and I don't have USC as a top team. Now, let's do the same thing with the bottom teams. So we're going to do just the opposite with the bottom teams. We're going to play against these bottom teams. Now, there will be some carryover, which means you have some of these top teams were playing some of these bottom teams, but we'll still calculate it for the sake of this example. So here are the results, 31-17. Is that not amazing? So granted, if you add those, I mean, that was extremely profitable. And even if we took out some of the overlay plays, that would have hit at like such a very high percentage, as opposed to creating a line based on that model. So again, complete philosophical change of the way that I calculate models, and moving forward, again, the best way to do it, in my opinion, is not even create a line. If you have your power rankings, your top teams, so all of your focus and energy should be devoted to that, as opposed to trying to take those top teams versus what other team and try to create a line based on that. Now, it will take some work, because you'll have to figure out the criteria for at what point am I going to cut off my top teams, at what point am I going to stop my bottom teams. But the way I was actually doing it, I was playing all the teams in the middle, which those are basically what we call 50-50 games, and you saw the results of those. It wasn't as accurate. So absolutely mind-blowing that it was this accurate. So this is like another point to be made about creating a model. If I was going to show the results, I'd have to go back and look at all those games that I suggested play. I think I had West Virginia. That was a loss. It would have probably been a loss. It would have probably not been profitable via that way. However, the same exact model, interpreting it a different way and calculating your margins and the way you approach it as it relates to actual play and plays, extremely profitable. Now, Here's the cool thing about this model. This is what I call a subjective model. All clients get access to this model, which is crazy, right? So it's $50 a month to join the service. In addition to, you get this model, you get all my lines for all sports. In addition, you get 100, I think we have probably close to 180 coaching videos on the site. You get access to all those. $50 a month if you want access to everything I just mentioned. In addition to all my plays, $100 a month. And the best value, instead of paying $100 each month, you can pay $4.99 one time. That gives you access to everything on the site. There's a link to join in the description box. Greatly appreciate you guys watching this video. And again, when you're creating models, again, I would put all my emphasis on the power rankings and create a criteria as opposed to trying to create a line off those power rankings. Hope this video helps. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.